So our local library recently played host to writer and illustrator Jeff Lemire. And this was a big deal because it was incredibly the first time they've ever played host to a graphic novelist. Jeff most certainly came to the attention of the library on the strength of his 2009 graphic novel Essex County. Essex County would go on to win many awards, and it was also voted by the CBC listeners in 2010 as one of the 10 most essential Canadian novels of the decade. It would go on to compete in the 2011 CBC Canada Reads competition and was defended by Sarah Quinn of Tegan and Sarah fame. Now, it would eventually lose out to Terry Fallis's The Best Laid Plans, but it represented the first graphic novel to ever make the shortlist. At first glance, the art style really isn't my thing, but those black and white scratchings do get under your skin after a while. It seems the perfect way to evoke that sense of loneliness, that of Lester growing up in a sparsely populated county that represents the southernmost tip of Ontario, or Vince, who's trying to eke out a meager living in Toronto after a hockey career cut short. It's a story you tell when you spend your entire adolescence lamenting the sort of rural backwoods community that you grew up in, and you can't wait to escape to the big city. And as you get older, you escape to Toronto, and it's a series of shitty jobs and eating greasy takeout food and really endless hustle. And you start thinking about where you came from a little bit differently. And at the time, Jeff Lemire was also playing some pickup shinny with some of his co-workers in the public rinks around Toronto and really thinking about hockey and its place in his life. While the story itself isn't exactly autobiographical, it does take lots of elements from Jeff's past. The comics that Lester draws are those that Jeff drew when he was young, and they were discovered in an old chest when he was visiting his parents. You realize that this is a style that he can't mimic as an adult anymore, and that there is an authenticity to those drawings because they were ones that he drew when he was a kid. They remind me a lot of the comics that I drew when I was young as well. Unfortunately, or gratefully, mine have been lost to landfills long ago. I could go on about my love for Essex County, but Ron Litt does a far better and insightful job of examining the book itself. I suggest you check out her video review. Essex County ended up opening up a lot of doors for Jeff Lemire, and we fast forward to the present, where we find him as the writer for The Extraordinary X-Men with Humberto Ramos. It hasn't even been released, and it's already topping the pre-order charts, and is destined to become a huge bestseller. He's also kicking off Old Man Logan, and has taken the unenviable task of writing the All-New Hawkeye after the legendary and incomparable run by Matt Fraction and David Aja. It's also been announced that he'll be writing Moon Knight in 2016, which I am very excited about. Moon Knight's one of those characters that just doesn't get enough love in my mind. And that's just the work that he's doing with the House of M. Over at Valiant, he's writing Bloodshot Reborn, and over at Image, he's kicked off a new miniseries with Emmy Lennox called Plutona, and he's also doing art duties with his good friend Scott Snyder's comic called AD After Death. And let's not forget his work as writer with another artist, Dustin Nguyen, on a comic called Descender, which was released as a trade paperback recently. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about Descender, because it is absolutely fantastic. I've only known about Dustin Nguyen for his work with Little Gotham, where he tends to do the denizens of Gotham City as cutesy, kawaii little drawings. His watercolor style doesn't seem like the natural choice to render a comic about robots in the future, but it is absolutely beautiful. He has a great way of drawing the future and technology. And it's not just the guns and the ships that are in the foreground, but the architecture and the buildings in the background, whether it's a metropolitan cityscape or a long-abandoned mining colony in space. And the story itself that Jeff Lemire writes is fantastic. The book opens with these giant Kirby-esque Galactus-like robots appearing in orbit around several of the planets that make up the United Galactic Council. They become known as harvesters for the death and destruction that they wreak on the planets below. Fast forward to 10 years when a young companion robot wakes up. He's been sent to a remote mining colony to be a sibling to a young boy. And he awakens to this strange new world, post-robot calls, and very few robots left. And suddenly all these heavily armed factions arrive at this mining colony to capture this young robot, who may hold the key to the harvesters themselves. Anyway, the first arc has been fantastic, and I can't wait for it to pick up again later this month. Even more exciting for Jeff and artist Dustin Nguyen is Sony has already optioned it off to be made into a movie, with both of them serving as executive producers. Alright, enough burying the lead. The big news was that the library actually asked me to play host to Jeff Lemire. We did an interview in the main lounge of the library. Jeff was gracious and awesome, and I think we did fairly well for two self-professed introverts as we fumbled through our questions. Jeff also gave a sneak peek to his new graphic novel called Roughneck, due out from Simon & Schuster later next year. It looks absolutely stunning, and on top of doing the illustration, Jeff is coloring the work in watercolor, and it looks beautiful. The story is about a Cree hockey player, a one-time enforcer that's been put out to pasture, returning to his roots in Black River up north when his sister runs into a bit of trouble. Jeff's very aware of the optics of a white guy actually writing a story that features predominantly native people, and so he wanted to get it right. And he did a lot of research while he was up north. He was inspired in great part by the writings of Joseph Boyden. I've had a chance to read Orenda, and I have to tell you, it is a fantastic read. It is visceral and bloody, and it is at odds with the sort of dry history of Canada that we learned when we were in school. Jeff talked about going up north to research a new character when he was writing DC's Justice League United. This character would eventually become the Native American hero, Equinox. But at the same time, he was researching a lot of the elements that would become part of Roughneck. By far, the best story of the night is Jeff recounting an experience up north snowmobiling with Joseph Boyden and Gordon Downey of The Tragically Hip. It really does not get more Canadian than that. Of course, at the end of the night, Jeff was kind enough to sign my copy of Essex County. And so there you have it. Two great graphic novels, Essex County and Descender, both by Jeff Lemire. So what graphic novels are you reading lately that you're loving? Let me know in the comments below.